Inspiration can stem from many aspects of life. When creating music, there are no boundaries. From the loss of a loved one to writing your own alter egos, music has been the key to so many prolific works. But for this band, the source of motivation stemmed from something dark, stories that were being conveyed beyond the mortal realm. This is the story of how a Ouija board helped write one of the most unhinged batshit prog albums of the 2000s, Mars Volta's The Bedlam in Goliath.
Because I think last time you were here, it was kind of the beginning of all the sort of the insanity of the record. We had the Ouija board and things were starting to go a little bit weird.
Do any of the songs on the album reference your experiences with the Ouija board?
The entire album does.
Is Goliath still on you? Have you got him? With the album coming out, are things getting better? I mean...
Like a phoenix from the ashes of the prolific post-hardcore outfit at the Drive-In, vocalist Cedric Bixler-Zavala and guitarist Omar Rodríguez-López sought to forge a different sound from the raw and jagged angst of their youth. The product was a seamless fusing of diverse musical genres, citing progressive, psychedelic, Latin, salsa, and jazz fusion into a maelstrom of technicality. For those that don't know about the Mars Volta, think King Crimson, Pink Floyd, and Zappa had an experimental prog child with Miles Davis and Santana. I know, a hefty claim, but just trust me on this one. In 2003, the Mars Volta birthed a new age of sound of progressive rock with their debut studio album, De-Loused in the Comatorium, a concept album which explores the journey of an artist who's fallen into a coma, taken to a world inhabited by his drawings, judged, then forced to serve penance for redemption. Ultimately, his goal shapes into becoming the ruler of his own created world. During the journey, he transforms into a worshipped idol, dies, and is reborn in order to save the children who pray for his return. He slaughters the evil ruler that presides over the world and liberates the people of the land. He then wakes up from the coma, unable to adjust to reality, with the creatures and exploits of his world imprinted in his mind. Choosing to die rather than live, he jumps from a highway overpass, descending back into the world he created. Needless to say, a hell of an album and one of my favorites of all time. Fast forward to 2006, and Mars Volta have established themselves as a prog rock powerhouse, touring with notable names such as Red Hot Chili Peppers, System of a Down, Queens of the Stone Age, and A Perfect Circle. In his travels, guitarist Omar Rodríguez-López walked the streets of Jerusalem, taking field recordings for inspiration tied around the environment. There he would meet a vendor at a flea market, who led him into a curio shop. These shops often house rare, unique, and distinctive items. Peering at the wares, among the amulets and candelabra, was an old antique spirit talking board, very similar to the format of a modern Ouija board. The craftsmanship of the board caught his eye, and instantly thought it would be an ideal gift for his fellow bandmate Cedric. After embarking on a tour with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, members of the Mars Volta would now partake in an after-gig ritual, communicating with the board, which the band affectionately named the Soothsayer. As a frequent source of intrigue, Soothsayer was often queried for information. The board would reveal more detail, stating that the group was communicating with the supposed spirit of an entity known as Goliath. After revealing the name, Cedric becomes slightly obsessed with the board, attempting to communicate often, prodding it for more information. Writing the experiences down, he would cite Goliath as a schizophrenic, manifesting itself into one of three different people, a male spirit as well as two female spirits, one being a mother, another being her daughter. Cedric reveled in the opportunity, seizing this as a perfect means to take down a completely unique perspective from the afterlife. He pushes further, eager to ask for details tied to the tales of the three. Yet in order to attain more, Goliath would now begin to ask for something in return. Its first requests were small and trivial, rum and flowers, in exchange for more information. Once the simple offerings were fulfilled, Goliath provided more details on their story, divulging the lust that floated around them, the acts of seduction, the spurs of infidelity, and the deep emotional pain attached to their love triangle. Tensions ultimately flared, with the daughter being murdered in a bout of rage by the male spirit. This he saw as an honor killing. The mother, wrought with grief, confronted the man over the loss of her child. A struggle then ensued, with the mother losing her life in the process. Cedric, now completely captivated, began to push further, inquiring about the origins of Goliath. As we know, the connection runs both ways. The voices, beginning to speak to their appetites. In return for knowing Goliath, Cedric must offer his body as a surrogate, and if a deal isn't attained, Goliath now threatens a premonition of oblivion and disillusion. Cedric, now realizing that Goliath harbors a very serious malevolent intent, reels back, no longer wishing to communicate with the Soothsayer for any information beyond the physical realm. In attaining records of these stories, Cedric develops the intention to tie this material to the Mars Volta's next studio album. Now regularly, this would be where Goliath and the Soothsayer's story ends. However, Goliath's warnings would come into play in ways that the band definitely didn't foresee. So much so that the band believed that the massive misfortune they were receiving stemmed from Goliath's warning. Their current drummer, Blake Fleming, sporadically quit while on tour, citing financial problems. This sunk the Mars Volta into a hole financially mid-tour, needing to attain an emergency fill. Cedric would then develop severe pain in his foot, an ailment that resulted over time from shoes he wore on tour, needing surgery. Doctors broke some of his bones intentionally and shaved them down, making it necessary to relearn how to walk. The creative direction, writing, and recording process for the new album would now begin, with the band intending to record the developing sessions and demos at Omar's home studio in Brooklyn, New York. After making significant headway in their sessions, their original studio engineer had a nervous breakdown, uttering to Omar, "I'm not going to help you make this record. You're trying to do something very bad with this record. You're trying to make me crazy, and you're trying to make people crazy." This situation would force the band to nearly start all over again, as the engineer hijacked the recordings with the intent to destroy their existing work. The band luckily was able to recover these through the hiring of other technicians and roadies to essentially, quote, break into his house and take our album back from him. The incidents of bad luck would continue. Their recording equipment, instruments, and hard drives containing their sessions often malfunctioned, having to discard and go through multiple HD and Pro Tools rigs, as well as multiple computers just to record. Demos and audio began to inexplicably disappear, as if it had never been recorded. Omar would confide in their mixer and engineer Rich Costi that these occurrences weren't caused by equipment or human error, but of misfortune stemming from the Soothsayer and Goliath. Rich, being grounded in logic, felt this was just superstition, and the events were in fact bad luck. That was until multiple power outages would plague the band during the recording process, causing further lapses and delays in finishing the record. This unfortunately culminated in Omar's home studio not flooding once, but twice. Interestingly enough, out of the 8 bedrooms in Omar's building, the studio was the only one impacted by the flood. An article on the band's website, published in 2007, would recall their state of mind at the time. Long-term album delays hit, and people aren't sleeping. Nonsensical words and phrases the board had previously spoken begin to pop up in things like documentaries about mass suicide. The Soothsayer keeps telling the same story, but the details are becoming more brutal. Midway through the recording process, Omar had finally reached a breaking point, seizing the Soothsayer and forcibly breaking it in half. He then traveled to an undisclosed location, wrapped the object in cloth, and buried it. This was his attempt to undo what had been done prior, a means to cease further frustration and mishaps from occurring again. Omar was so serious about the events he thought were tied to the Soothsayer that he didn't reveal the location of the burial to even other members of the band. Cedric, who was once enamored by the board, specifically requested that he not be told the location of its burial. In order to further quell events stemming from its existence, Omar forbade the band from speaking about the Soothsayer, Goliath, or its supposed curse to anyone else during the remainder of the album's production. Ridding themselves of the accursed object, the band set out to finish the recordings. Originally, Bedlam would be created with the intent to write a bleak and darker record, as its foundation was based on Goliath and the Soothsayer. What would emerge was a contrast, Bedlam now beginning to structure sections with brighter, upbeat, and energetic moments, a means to counteract and ward off the effects of the supposed curse. Metatron and Ileana are notable examples of this on earlier tracks, elapsing into the darker events lyrically and sonically that follow throughout the album. Allegedly, after Omar returned the Soothsayer to the Earth, the band underwent no further difficulties in their recording process, able to finish the record at a steady and accurate pace. The Mars Volta's fourth studio album, Bedlam and Goliath, was released on January 29th, 2008. The album was met with many critical reviews. Some praised it for its intense and technical prowess. Others were overwhelmed by its chaotic, sometimes heavy, and rapid section changes. For many Mars Volta fans, the album was solidified as a staple addition to their discography. Although the misfortunate events that followed the Soothsayer sessions seemed to be shaped into a speculated curse, they ultimately raised questions around logical coincidence versus a belief in mysticism of the supernatural. Many have theorized that the stories publicized behind the creation of the album were leveraged as means to propel its sales. Others conclude that the experience in bad luck could easily stem from objects like the Soothsayer or a Ouija board, for the practice of communicating with entities beyond our living realm shouldn't be tampered with, and can feasibly have negative repercussions. As with all questions on this matter, I'll let you be the judge. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and drop me a comment on your thoughts. Do you think the Soothsayer was real? Do you think these occurrences were just used for promotion, or maybe was it something more spiritual? We also drop a new video about content like this every single Wednesday, so I hope to see you again soon. If my studio flooded twice, I would think that there was a curse on me.